Welcome to Pursuing Joy, where we share audacious stories of joy-infused strength. I'm Julie Lunsford, and I have Zac here, and I'm going to have him introduce himself, where he's located, and what he has going on with Working Genius these days. Welcome, Zac.
Hi, Julie. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm located in southern Wisconsin, a tiny little town called Lake Geneva. Although it gets bigger, it's a tourist town, so it gets a lot bigger during the summer, which I have a love-hate relationship with. Uh, how I'm using the Working Genius, I don't know. I guess a better question would be how I'm not using it. It really does impact so much of what I do, how I interact with my wife, my daughter, my church, my friends. It's something that I have almost like as an underlying framework for how I see the world. And when my daughter is 7, and I'm 98% sure she's got invention as a genius because she's always got ideas. She's like, Dad, this would be such a good idea. Let's do this. And so seeing that, instead of being frustrated with ideas that maybe we don't need, seeing from her perspective the joy that she gets and understanding she's getting so much joy from coming up with an idea, how can I step into that? And even if it is a terrible idea, how can I step into that and meet her in her world? Yeah, so really, I think it impacts every facet of my life.
Yes, I understand that, and I have my 15-year-old just took the student assessment,
Yeah,
and she has invention and discernment as her geniuses, and I have three younger ones, and I'm very excited for the day that I
yeah,
get to discover their geniuses, but I think I have them pegged as
yeah,
well. I am excited about this episode in particular for a few reasons. One, and this seems to be the week for these geniuses to be highlighted. So my geniuses are wonder and discernment. Your geniuses are wonder and discernment. I have someone on
yes,
tomorrow, and her geniuses are wonder and discernment. And so
I love
I
it.
get to commiserate and collaborate with those geniuses, which I don't always get to do. And
Yeah,
we discovered that you also, like, we both participate in a faith. We're both believers, as well as you are also a host of a podcast also. So I'm excited to get your insights in several of these areas. Uh, so
yeah,
to to kind of piggyback off of a podcast that I listened to that you were on a year ago, you brought up that you had worked in a lot of faith-based organizations, and you had discovered that there was an issue with conflict, or the lack of
yeah,
conflict in those. And so
yeah,
I just had an interesting discussion with someone who is in the dating arena, just like I am. And we were talking about, like, we want to date other believers, right? And you
yep,
don't always know, like, where they fall on that spectrum at the
yep,
beginning. And so as you're getting to know them, we discovered that the more, like, if it was a 1 to 10, and a big believer, follower of Jesus, if they're in like the 8 to 10 range, they are more likely to ghost than just have an upfront conversation about, like, this isn't working, or I don't see where this is going. And so when
yeah,
you were correlating that to business, I thought, wow, this is interesting. So can you just
yeah,
elaborate on your discovery in the business field with that lack of conflict?
yeah. Specifically in faith-based organizations, Julie.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So a good friend of mine, Dr. Marcus Carlson, he calls it niceanity. Um,
Okay, I love that.
which when I first heard him say that, I was like, that's such a perfect term for it. Um, I think it's a mixture of, as Christians, I think we have this idea that, well, Jesus is love and God is love, and so we're supposed to love other people, which is true, but somehow we equate that as not saying the difficult yet necessary things. Pat Lencioni says, saying the kind, hard truth. And when we aren't able to say that kind, hard truth, it just destroys all of our relationships because
Mhm.
there's always difficult stuff. Being human is having issues. Like that's a part of being human. And if we're going to have issues in our relationships, I have issues with my daughter, with my best friends, with my wife, and if we can't address those, it just goes nowhere. I don't have this is obviously common sense stuff, but somehow when we get into faith-based organizations, we lose that sense of, oh yeah, sometimes I'm going to have to say difficult stuff, and even if there are issues, we just we just kind of gloss over them, and unfortunately, that ideological issues, if we were working together, Julie, maybe you did something. I'm like, that's not right. Like, that's the wrong thing. Like, something about what you did was wrong. If I don't address that, instead of the thing that you did being wrong, eventually who you are will be wrong.
Oh,
It
yeah.
will always turn into interpersonal issues. And now instead of doing the wrong thing, now they're a bad person, just because we didn't have enough courage to say the difficult thing. But if we look in the Bible, Jesus consistently says the difficult things that for some reason we don't say.
Right. No, that totally makes sense. So with that same mindset, with like the biblical foundation, I was thinking about how working genius is uh you can align it with the thought that in the body of Christ, every people have different spiritual giftings, or they have uh different different uh I'm not going to say geniuses because that's not biblical, but if you think about how when we learn about working genius, how we thrive in these two geniuses, and then we have our competencies and our frustrations, and we are not supposed to we're not getting out of any of those genius, or sorry, out of anything on the widget, right? Like we
Yep.
have to show up in that way, one way or the
Yep.
other at some point. And just because you have a certain gifting within the church, it doesn't mean that you don't have to show up in uh, in other giftings that you would probably highlight people
Yeah.
in when you're serving with other people. And you said when we were kind of talking before that you hadn't really thought about that, but if you consider that, were you using Working Genius in those? Was your time in the faith-based organizations, was that pre Working Genius?
Yeah. Well, I've been so I worked in Christian camping before I became a consultant. I worked in Christian camping. The Working Genius, Pat hadn't created it yet, unfortunately so. But I also have done a lot of work with camps since I started consulting and with churches as well. And I've
Okay.
used it in that capacity. So I have used it. Um, I'll say this might be because you're right. I hadn't really thought about the connection between spiritual gifts and working geniuses. I think a bigger issue, and I'm going to maybe skirt around your question a little bit, if that's
Okay.
okay, really, is in churches specifically, I think we get the mindset that, oh, I'm volunteering, so I just do whatever is needed.
Okay.
And we don't think about the giftings of people, whether we're talking about geniuses or whether we're talking about spiritual gifts. We don't think about the giftings that God has given people when both we say, "Hey, I want to volunteer," and when we're assigning volunteers. And so we just say, "Ah, well, here's Jimmy. We've got a gap over in this position, stacking chairs. Let's have him stack chairs." And Jimmy, maybe has the gift of teaching or of um, support, or maybe he's an inventor. I don't know, right? And by having him stack chairs, not only are we not utilizing his giftings, but we're putting in something that's going to make him absolutely miserable. And I think if we just took, I feel very strongly about volunteers. I think volunteers should meet the same standards as employees. because no
Mhm.
one no one who's outside the organization can tell if it's a volunteer. And I don't care if you're talking about a church or a camp or any other nonprofit.
Mhm.
Only the people inside the organization know who the volunteers are. From the outside, everyone is still associated with this organization. And so if you show up as a volunteer, or if you allow volunteers to show up and maybe they aren't joyful and you really value joy, or maybe they don't take the time to stop and listen and they're always in a hurry, but you really value slowing down and listening to people, or maybe they don't care about details, but in your organization you really care about details. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. If they don't meet those criteria, they will be a negative reflection for your organization. But I think because they're volunteers, then we think, so we'll just lower all our standards for them. When in
Right.
actuality, you're just lowering the standard for the organization as a whole. And I just think it's such a bad idea for organizations to lower those standards. And I personally think that a reason why a lot of organizations struggle to get volunteers is because the best volunteers want to be associated with great organizations and with great people.
Oh, right.
If you just let anyone, doesn't matter who they are, come and volunteer, you're going to lose your best volunteers because they're going to want to go work in this other organization where there's a better vetting process and people are utilized better, whether it's with their spiritual giftings or their working genius or
Right.
their values. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. I think that, especially in the faith-based world, again, I think this goes back to misconceptions we have about our faith and how, oh yes, we have to serve, and it doesn't matter how we serve, we should just serve because that's important. When the Bible clearly doesn't say that. The Bible clearly says God has given us gifts. We should be using our gifts how it like in the way that He's given them to
Right.
us. If the whole body was an eye, then how would we? I'm misquoting it. I know it is, but if everything was
I know
an eye,
where
then
you're
how would
yeah.
we taste? Or if
Yeah.
everything was a tongue, how would we hear? Like this is so important, and yet I think we just say, oh, they can fold chairs or they can serve pancakes or they can preach or whatever. Like and I just think it's a negative view that we have, which again links back to this inability to have difficult conversations. Like,
Right.
hey, you're really terrible at stacking chairs. Like, what's going on? Are you in the wrong place? Are you not enjoying this? Like, how can we support you to better use the gifts? Because it seems like we're not using them here.
Right. And there is somebody that does find joy and energy in stacking those
Yes.
chairs, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
it does all tie in the sense that
Totally.
working what I realized when I discovered that I was in the wrong line of work was that I was depriving someone else of doing what was within their joy. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't a selfish decision. It was actually
Yeah.
keeping something from somebody else. And so when you put
Totally.
people in the right positions just based on what brings them joy, then it trickles down or goes
Totally.
up as well.
Yep.
So that is an excellent point. Have you ever done the Working Genius with volunteers?
I have, yes. Um, but only once, actually.
Okay.
I wish. I keep trying to say we should do it with volunteers, but only one. It was a church let me do it with their volunteers.
Okay. I've only seen it done with church staff, so I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
tell me how since we're going in weaving around conflict and different conversations like that, what is enter the danger for you? That's the name of your podcast. What is the
Yeah.
meaning behind that for you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say I stole it from Pat Lencioni.
Okay.
It's his phrase. I stole it and have made it my own, so to speak. But the meaning behind it is it it feels relationally dangerous to have difficult conversations, whether you're entering into conflict or if you're holding someone accountable. It doesn't really matter what those conversations are. They feel relationally dangerous because they are. If I hold you accountable for something, Julie, there is a chance you will say, I don't have anything to do with you anymore, Zach. I just want you to be someone who's always encouraging. And when you hold me accountable, we're done. That's a possibility. And if we want to have deep, meaningful, and fulfilling relationships, we have to enter that danger. We just have to, right? We have to
Right.
enter that relational danger, or else our relationships will always be shallow,
Right.
and we won't be able to become the people that we need or help others become the people that they can really be.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I have recently there's a theme in my life right now. And I don't I'm starting to understand it, I think, but I've had to have difficult conversations almost weekly for like the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah,
And what I have tried to do in those moments is to make sure that that other person has feels like they have dignity in the
yeah,
conversation. And that
yeah,
goes back to just recovery work that I've done in the past. And it wasn't something that I was thinking about well, I wasn't prepared. Any of these, it was kind of like, oh, this is what I have to deal with right now. I don't get to process it and come back to it. But in the back of my
yeah.
mind, I just kept thinking, okay, allow this person dignity in this conversation. I was not necessarily treated well in the
Mm,
but I wanted to make sure I wasn't escalating based on going tit for tat based on how they
yeah,
were coming towards
yeah,
me. So I think that it is. I don't think it comes natural to us. It's something that has
yeah,
to be learned kind of throughout
yeah.
experiences and life and different things that are thrown at
Absolutely.
us. Uh, one question I have is where do you think working genius shows up in those types of conversations? And have you used that in a way of when you are talking to people about entering those conversations or going into conflict? Is there a way to weave working genius into that?
Yeah, I think so. I'll say this too. I love the Working Genius. I absolutely love it. I think it's a game changer. It's given me a whole new level of self awareness. And now I'll add a small caveat before I answer your question, which is I think it's a really good question. That it is only applicable in some ways, right? Because there's so much more to us as people than just the
Mhm.
Working Genius, and there's so much more to life. So, um, which I know this is the Working
No, no, no.
Genius.
Let's
It's
go.
a, it's,
Go
it's a
all
Working Genius
over.
podcast,
I'm
but
good with this.
um, so while I think there is some interplay, I think that an inventor might be trying to come up with ideas to solve the issue, right? A galvanizer might be trying to push people through the issue just onto a solution. An enabler might say, "Hey, like, what's your like? How can I help you this relationship like get better?" Like, so I think what we have tendencies to show up in certain ways with our genius. That's just in life in general, not specifically with conflict. But I also think there's so much more, where we grew up, geographically, whether you're in the Midwest of the United States or the deep South or California or Australia or Thailand or Italy, the
Mhm.
culture that you grew up in has a big impact. And then the family that you grew up in as well. Some families are okay with yelling, and that's how they express their conflict. They just yell at each other. I can't. That stresses me out thinking about it. I don't know that I'd enjoy that, but I've met people who have been in that situation, and maybe I think we've also got wounds that affect us, right? One of my favorite questions to ask my clients is, what's something that you're bringing today from a previous job, or
Mhm.
sometimes I avoid the word wounds because some people think, oh, that's a bit soft, and um,
Right.
but really what I'm asking is, hey, what's a wound that you're bringing to this job or this moment that affects how you're going to show up? Because maybe in the past they tried to enter conflict and just got completely shut down repeatedly over months, or maybe they tried to enter conflict and they were gaslit, or maybe someone just started yelling at them, right? And those kinds of things carry weight, right? Like our soul, our heart, our body remembers those kinds
Mhm.
of things. Those are the wounds that we carry with us. A lot of the time, we don't realize it. And so I think keeping those things in mind is really important. Remembering this is, again, going way off the working genius here,
No.
I think in some ways, but um, the fundamental attribution error is a really really important piece when it comes to conflict, and this really helps with the working genius too, with understanding other people, not just with conflict, but understanding people in general. And the fundamental attribution error is that we apply our behaviors to our circumstances and other people's behaviors to their character. And
Ah,
so
okay, yes.
if you're late to a meeting, it's because you're lazy, you're inconsiderate, you're rude, you're selfish, you name it. If I'm late to a meeting, well, my daughter she was running late, so I had to drop her off for school for late, and then the traffic was really bad, and then and then my car got ran over a nail. I had to change the tire. You name it. We've got all kinds of excuses for ourselves. This happens to me all the time. If someone cuts me off, my first instinct is, God, what a jerk. I'm like, well, hold on. I'm not a jerk when I do that. I'm
Right.
forgetful, or I didn't see him, or I'm running late, or you name it. And remembering that can really help us, both with the working genius, right? Because then we can be like, oh, they probably aren't a jerk for trying to come up with ideas all the time. That's just how they're wired.
Right.
Or they actually aren't, pushovers for always saying, "How can I help? What do you need?" Like, I'm just here to support. They've probably got enablement as a genius. So um, that answer, I know, Julie, went a little bit all
No,
over the map. I don't know that I actually answered your question, but I danced around it as best as I could.
okay, so this is some of my thoughts on that. First of all, what are your competencies?
My competencies: invention and enablement.
Okay, so uh, first, with the what you were saying about the conflict, I think working genius helps with the judgment and the guilt. Like when I learned about working genius and
Yeah,
I heard those two words, I was like,
yeah,
okay, I this makes so much sense because I feel guilty that
yeah,
I don't have tenacity.
yes,
And I judge people who cannot brainstorm with me,
yep,
right? And so I
yep,
and I'm attributed and I probably am being like your character you have low character development or something along
yeah,
those lines probably. So I think it does help in that way. And so this is my theory. Uh and uh I haven't heard anybody else say this, but I see it over and over. And even when my daughter took the working genius. So my theory is that your competencies show up because of life experiences. So, as in, your geniuses are more of your
mm,
calling and your purpose, and your competencies is what life has thrown at you. And so, you've been able to get good at those things. So,
mm,
and so when you talk about wounds, I feel like that competencies were developed from that, and frustrations are more along the lines of what people were kind of telling you you should be doing that you were pushing back against most of your life. But again, this is just thoughts that I've had. So for me, my competencies are invention and galvanizing. And if I look back, I can see where I've had to problem solve and I've had to galvanize people in situations that were very difficult. And so
mm,
and mainly dealing with people struggling with addiction in my
yeah,
history, I had to show up like that. My daughter's competencies are enablement and wonder, my oldest daughter. And
yeah,
I think that has to do with the fact that she's been called on, and I've had to lean on her a lot during her life. And then my genius is wonder, and so I think that's how she's had to keep up with me in that, and that's
yeah,
how she's developed that as a competency. What
yeah.
what do you, what do you think about that?
It's interesting. I'm not. I'd have to think about it. Typical WD, Julie. I think there's so much nuance. Um, I'm very
Oh God,
hesitant
yes,
to
you're right. You're right about that.
say uh
Okay, we
either
don't.
way. Sure, I'd have to think about it
Okay,
and really look at it. It's an interesting thought. Um, I do know. I'll say this personally. I was when I first took the Working Genius assessment. Wonder came back as a frustration instead of a genius for me.
okay,
And looking at that and thinking, because I took the assessment and then I was looking at the qualitative portion, and I was reading. I was like, no, this is. I actually love to do this. What had happened is my whole career, I had people tell me, stop asking questions, get in line, just do what you're told, and
mhm,
those kinds of questions had just squashed my wonder until like because I felt like it wasn't allowed, and I wasn't allowed to wonder. And once I took the Working Genius and once I understood, I'm like, actually, this is a genius for me for sure. I love to do this. This brings me when I get to look around and I can't even help it everywhere. Like this is wrong and this could be better and this could be like, are you kidding me? Look at all this stuff around here that we could be doing better. And it's so frustrating when other people don't see it or they're just happy with the status quo. What's going on? Can you not see all this stuff? We could be so anyway. Um, so that there might be an element of that in there. I'm not sure. Uh,
I will say
yeah,
this also on the wonder and discernment. When someone poses something like that to me, I I can come up I can say something, like, you could have a response to what I just said, like, right now, but and I don't know if it's the wonder or the discernment or the combo, but 24 hours later, I'm like, "Oh, I just had
yeah.
to now I have a much better answer, a much better thought based on
Oh
just
yeah,
needing 20 like, that time
yeah,
to
yeah.
process." So,
Oh yeah,
definitely consider it and let me
yeah,
know what you
yeah.
think.
Because
Um,
we're responsive, right? We've got those responsive geniuses. We don't like to put ourselves into the conversation. I have trained myself to do that in a lot of ways because I need to for my job, but we like to be really thoughtful about the things that we say. We like to have put a lot of time
mhm,
and processed through because we see so much nuance and because we see so many sides to a situation. Whereas an inventor will just come and they'll be like, "Wow,
yes,
this is a great, or this is an idea, and this is an idea, and this is," and they'll just spout off 15 different ideas, and I'm trying like, "Whoa, hold on, give me one at a time here."
right.
Um, so yeah,
No, that totally makes sense. Yes,
yeah,
definitely. And I know for me with having wonder and discernment, it it's a lot of questions, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you're not only throwing them out here, there's a lot going on
yeah,
internally too
yeah,
with those questions.
absolutely,
So tell me because so the reason I started linking working other than I love to evangelize working genius, but for me, working genius gave me that aha moment that 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 joy does matter and it's not just this abstract,
yeah,
lovey-dovey type of feeling, but it actually does equal productivity. It actually does change everything and joy matters overall. Can you
yeah.
tell me about a time when there something didn't seem like it was the most joyful experience to have, but based on time and the way things have evolved since then, that it is a you can see joy in it now.
Um, that's a great question, Julie. I struggle with that a little bit because I think in a lot of ways finding joy is just a choice that we make. Now, I understand sometimes things are innately frustrating, but I also think that we see and we find what we look for. And so if we
Mhm.
look for joy, we'll find joy. And that doesn't mean that our life is all happy, everything's good all the time. I think it just means that there is always joy and always despair around us. That's just life, life
Mhm.
on earth. We live in a broken world. but that doesn't mean it's completely broken. We live in this beautiful place that God has given us. I know amazing people, and so I can choose to look at those good things and choose that joy, or I can
Right.
choose to look at, man, there's so much brokenness. There's war going on. There's poverty. There's hunger. There's children dying, and I don't ignore that because I care about that. But I don't let that be my focus.
Right.
I don't let that suck up my attention. Now I care about it and I want to fix it, absolutely, but I want my primary focus to be on joy. So I say that, and um, I also want to say that there's one time, like I think in hindsight, when you look back, a lot of situations in the moment can seem really bad. So when the Working Genius first came out, I was working at a camp on my way to being a consultant. So it was like right in the middle. I was in my last 6 months there, and I love camp. So let me say this first. I love the ministry of camp. I love people that work at camp. I spent almost 15 years in camping ministry, and I just adore it. But I was so miserable in this job. I would wake up every day and I wouldn't want to go to work. I was completely disengaged. I felt like I had no passion for what I was doing, which for me was a big deal because because as I said, I love it. And through this process of uncovering the Working Genius and discovering what mine was, I realized the job that I had at that moment, which I'd had for about a year, 90% of it was tenacity work,
Okay.
stacking chairs, literally stacking chairs
Right.
or unstacking chairs. And as I have tenacity as a frustration, it became so apparent to me so quickly. I'm like, this is why I hate my job right now. This is why I'm dreading coming to work. And so looking at that, I look back on that time, even though it was incredibly difficult, with a lot of joy, because then I realized it gave me so much clarity. And this is why I enjoy the work. This is why this work frustrates me. And that understanding that I had within
Mhm.
myself was such a relief to me to finally know and not feel, to your point, I felt so guilty so long because I just felt like I was lazy. I hated doing some of these things. I was like, am I just a lazy person?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm lazy. I think I work hard, but I hate doing this stuff. Does that make me lazy? And so being able to free myself of that guilt and start to move more into how I was created
Mhm.
really gave me so much joy and so much fulfillment, even though it was a really tough time.
How did you segue into consulting and coaching?
Um, that's a great question. So it was something I always say was completely a God thing. Um, I I the table group. I was watching a webinar. I've followed Pat since 2006. Patrick
Okay.
Lencioni. I've
Mhm.
followed his work since 2006. So almost 20 years. So I got emails and updates from him, and they had an online webinar that they were doing. And on that webinar, they announced two things that changed my life. The first thing they announced was the Working Genius. It was a very rough version of it. I think they'd only just done it in the first, like in the previous few weeks.
Mhm.
This was in 2020, uh, and they had this webinar because COVID had hit, and they were like, "We need a help. We need something." So the Working Genius hadn't been officially released yet. They also announced what they called Kappa Pro, which was Consultant and Practitioners Alliance, and it was
Okay.
essentially a training program that they wanted to do to train people who were consultants or who wanted to be consultants in their methodology. And so I was like, that sounds awesome because I've loved Pat forever. I use his work internally. I used it internally with every team I ran. And so I just called them up. I'm like, hey, I'm really interested in this. And they said, great, this is how much it was. And it was more than $8,000 a year. And I said, hey, I work at camp. I make $8,000 a year. Like they said, okay. And they just gave me a really, really good deal that even someone working at camp could afford. And so from that process, it was really easy for me to just make that shift. So I basically gave my notice at camp and started doing consulting. Um, and here we are 5 years later now.
Okay, that's all right. That's amazing.
It was
What
very
in
sudden.
yeah, yes, that was a pretty big pivot. So
Yeah, it
that's
was.
awesome. And I love to encourage people to just consider that making I know it's not everyone's built for it, but
Yeah,
just kind of exploring
yeah,
what's out there. We only have one life to live. So
yeah.
what
I,
would you say are your main industries?
well, before I get there,
Okay.
Julie, can I say something on what you just said? Do you
Mhm.
mind? I think that as humans, most of us understand sunk cost and the idea of sunk cost. But I think that we don't often apply it to ourselves and our lives and our careers. And so we get this idea in our heads, man, I've been doing this job for 10 years. If I have to quit, I'm basically going to be starting from scratch. But sometimes that's exactly what we need to do. And I think if you looked at it this way and said, hey, if I'm starting my career today, am I going to do A or like am I going to do B? And if A is what you're doing now, but B is going to bring you more choice, why wouldn't you do B? Because every day we wake up and we make a new choice about what we're going to do. Annie Duke wrote a brilliant book called Quit, and she said it this way: if there's a concert going on and it's going to be 20 degrees and it's freezing and it's rainy and outdoors, and someone says, "Hey, I have a free ticket. Do you want to come?" The ticket's worth $95. We're probably going to say, no, I don't want to be in 20-degree weather. I don't care who the artist is. That sounds miserable. But if I paid the $95 for that ticket, I have so much more stubbornness around not going. I'm going to do everything I can to go because I paid that $95. In reality, that $95 is gone. I've spent it. Every decision I'm making now is a new decision on how I'm going to invest my time.
Right.
So do I want to invest my time being miserable and going standing in the cold for 20-degree weather in the rain or snow or whatever it is? Or am I going to say, actually, no, I don't want to. I want to go stay home and be warm, and that sounds horrible, right? And this ramps up, that idea of sunk cost internally ramps up the more we've invested, whether it's time or money. Um, it's if we had spent $500 on it, like people who went to the Taylor Swift. My wife is a big Taylor Swift concert, right? Some
Yeah.
of those people spent thousands of dollars. If it was outdoor in the freezing cold and rain, it's going to be so much harder for them to say no to that, right? And it's the same way with careers. If we spent years in a career or in a relationship, right? If we spent all this
Mhm.
time in a relationship, well, they'll propose soon. I'm sure that they'll commit to me soon. We'll get married soon. And then 10 years have gone by and you're still in this dating relationship and the guy or girl that you're with has no intention of marrying you. It's this idea, well, I've spent so much time with them.
Yeah.
It's really tough to move on. So I say that, like, if you think, oh, maybe I should leave and do something new, you probably should. Because if you're thinking about it, you probably should, and probably what's holding you back is just this idea of sunk cost. And if it feels anything close to 50-50, just go for it. Because ask yourself this question too, right? In a year's time, am I still going to be miserable in this job? Or
Mhm.
will I have more joy? Probably if you're miserable, you're still going to be miserable in a year's time. In this other job, will you be miserable? You have no idea. Maybe, but if you are, then you're no worse spot than you are now. But there's the extreme potential. You can have so much more joy in your life in a year's time if you made this change. Um, anyway, I just wanted to go on that spiel because that's really like this. I know this podcast is about finding joy, and sometimes we just get stuck in ourselves. So
Yeah.
if you're on that fence, I really encourage you, make that choice, take the leap. You know, it's almost always worth it.
So I'm going to change my question based on that.
Okay.
Have you seen someone, and it doesn't have in your consulting, using Working Genius, using whatever conflict strategies, whatever the conversation is with a business, have you seen someone make that decision based on the information that you did with them about themselves or about how the team is going? Have you seen someone change based on that information?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not common, unfortunately. It's
Mm.
not common, but I have a good friend of mine actually who was an accountant for years and wanted to do consulting and would talk with me about it. And there was a group of us that met. He's like, I really want to do this. I really want to do this, but I don't know if I can. And we kept encouraging him. You should do it. You should do it. And excuse me, about 6 months ago, he did. He started his consulting practice, and he's having the time of his life. Um, he's enjoying himself more. He's feeling more fulfilled. He's getting so much more joy at work and in life. Uh, so
Okay.
yeah, I yeah,
That's interesting that you said accounting because I have
yeah,
4 instances now that I'm thinking about it in these conversations, and even for myself, I was in a finance position when I discovered Working Genius,
yeah,
and it was like, aha, okay,
yeah,
this is not what I need to be doing. And I
yeah,
think you could get into like scarcity and abundance in this conversation as well, because
yeah,
I, as a single mom, was like, I just need to do whatever it takes to keep everybody
yep,
fed and a roof over our
totally,
heads. Joy shouldn't matter at all.
totally,
But it, it does make me more productive, if it does make me better aligned in my work, and if it does give someone else the joy of being in this position, like it all just started clicking, and that's how I
totally,
ended up starting my own recruiting, because my business based on the Working
yeah,
Genius assessment.
yeah,
And I had a person on here who had an accounting background and realized that he hated it and started consulting. He started
yeah,
hiring accountants, right, and
yeah,
managing
yeah,
accountants and starting his own
yep,
business. And then someone else that I had on here had, it was a person working for a college, and they had the career uh, development side of things.
yeah,
And someone in their junior year who was majoring in accounting was like, "Oh my gosh, I chose the wrong major." But then
yeah,
when she showed him his Working Genius, he was able to see how he could use accounting in a completely different way. Taking like the same
yeah,
education, the same experience, the same background, using it, but using it in where they fall in and find their joy
yeah,
in their work at the same
yeah,
time. So I think
yeah,
that's so any accountants out there, if you want to make that move, it can be
yeah,
done.
yep, yep,
All right.
absolutely.
So tell me, where are you finding your joy and energy currently?
The my two closest relationships is my daughter and my wife. They bring me so much joy. My daughter's 7, and she's such a bundle of energy and craziness, and I love her. We could be potentially dangerous together with the shenanigans that we would pull off, but it's so much fun. I love my job. I get so much joy from it. The fact that I get to have conversations like this with you,
Mhm.
Julie, that I get to help, other my clients, that I get to help them reach their potential, reach more of their potential, is so fulfilling. That I get to help organizations and employees of those organizations and customers of those organizations be more fulfilled, and have more joy. My why in life is to help people go home less miserable and more fulfilled,
Mhm.
right? And so if I can have any interaction with people, I was just at the grocery store yesterday, um, and I try to, like, in every moment, engage with the people that I'm seeing, because I know that that matters. People want to be seen, they want to be heard, they
Mhm.
want to be engaged with. Especially if you go to the grocery store, like so many people, like, hey, help me find this. Where do I get this? Like that's all they care about. But when we can see people as people and see them like this guy looks really tired. That lady looks stressed. Like, what's going on in their life? I just spend, it doesn't take long. You could spend 2 minutes asking about them. Not only is that going to give them so much joy, it's going to give me so much
Right.
joy as well, because that is me fulfilling the mission that God has given me to help people go home more fulfilled. And if I can spend 2 minutes in my day doing that, absolutely, that's the best 2 minutes I'm going to spend all day. Um, so finding moments like that where I can live out this purpose that I have, where I can see people and ask them questions, I get so much joy from that. Yeah,
I hear you. And that has to be the wonder and discernment. It'll be interesting to talk to my wonder discernment person tomorrow because I what you did so because I'm working virtually most of the time and I'm inside my house most of the time. This podcast and getting to ask questions and being able to be inquisitive gives me
yeah,
what I need to go to the tenacious tasks that I have to do
yeah,
throughout the day. And what you
yeah,
just said about even on the days that I don't have this, if I do just go out and interact with the people that you were just talking about. Like my
yeah.
daughter will say to me, she'll say, "You sure did perk up. It must be because you got to talk to a stranger today." And so that
Love
does
it.
it does fuel
I
me.
love
So
it.
that totally makes sense. What you
That's
just
great.
said. So yes, that uh, and I mean there are and yes that when you go down the wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, tenacity. Like once you can see where your joy lies, even if you can't do it overall, like in your scope of work. Like I've been interviewing people lately and I've actually been challenging them in the fact that I'm actually not going to hire you or pass you along in this job because you actually don't find joy in this work.
Yeah,
Like I understand that you went to school for engineering, but you do not
yeah,
find joy in this. So I would
yeah,
encourage you to even if you are going to continue in this field to do whatever does make your heart leap in a hobby or
yeah,
in a side hustle or something to where you're able to fuel yourself
yeah,
in that way. And
yeah,
I'd love to see that come alive for people when they do discover
yeah.
the working genius. So,
Yeah, one of my biggest um what's the right word here? Um maybe the things that grieves me the most is that when looking for jobs, especially, people are so focused on the paycheck instead of on the
mhm,
work.
yeah,
And there's been so much research that's been done that shows that up to a point, and they actually have a number. It's $75,000 up to a point. And now this might be a little
oh,
higher because
yeah,
I think this research was 5 or 6 years ago. Um, Up to a point, money can bring you more happiness because we need to have a house over our heads. We need to have food. We need to like have clothes on our back. There are some things we need. So up to a point, $75,000. This is what the research has said. Money can bring us more happiness, but
mhm,
above $75,000, it can sometimes have an inverse effect on our joy, right? Where we have too much money, you know, the saying more money, more problems, right? And so hearing people who like, oh, I need this job because I have to make more money, or I need this job because I have to make more money. If you make $25,000 a year, you're in the top 10% of earners in the world.
mhm,
If you make $35,000 a year, you're in the top 1%. So already we have so much. We're just surrounded by this consumeristic
right,
culture that tells us constantly, you need more, you need more, you need more. And that's robbing us of the joy that we could have, right? Going back to what I said really early in the conversation, where are we looking? Are we looking at all of this stuff that we don't have? Because there is always going to be stuff that we don't have.
mhm,
There is always going to be someone who's better than you and has more than you and makes more than you. There's only one person in the world who's the best at anything, right? So it doesn't matter. And so what are we looking at? Like, are we letting this stuff we don't have rob our joy? Because we shouldn't be. And that's a choice that we can make to start thinking. I mean, I have a gratitude journal right here. Every
mhm,
day I just write down 5 things that I'm grateful for, and that helps me, stay focused and remember how much I do have, and really helps me to be more joyful.
Yes, that resonates with me in a way of even launching this business. I've had to cut back quite a bit, and my what I would have told you my joy was in traveling and creating these phenomenal experiences for my children. But if I consider what you just said, so I've had to cut back on that, but I was finding I was escaping, right? Like
Yeah,
that because I was not living and working in my joy at that time. And so the cutback hasn't felt like that much of a loss
yeah,
because now there's just joy infused throughout the day. And my children, I'll pick up on that as well. So
yeah.
that totally makes sense. Oh,
Mm.
Zac, thank you so much for the conversation, and I love the challenge in the questions themselves and how you were going to answer them. The wonder and discernment was alive and well in this conversation. I love that. Can you tell others how to get in touch with you? What is the best way to discover your consulting
Yeah,
services?
yeah. Thank you, by the way. I've loved this conversation so much. Um, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Zac Wilcox. My email, ZAC at zwilcoxconsulting.com, or my phone number is 559-387-6436.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. I hope that we talk again soon. Thank you.
It was my pleasure. And me too. Bye, Julie.
Bye.